Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, im Namen des Dekans und der ganzen Theologischen Fakultät heiße ich Sie herzlich willkommen. Wir haben mit Musik angefangen. Was wäre Musik, wenn es nur eine Note gäbe? Was wäre ein Chor mit nur einer Stimme? Natürlich birgt die Vielzahl der Töne die Gefahr der Verstimmung. Doch ohne die Vielfalt der Töne wäre Musik unmöglich. Und ohne die Vielfalt der Stimmen könnte es keinen Chor geben. Vor 2 Wochen war ich in Neapel. Dort gibt es einen irischen Universitätsprofessor, der die Lehre eines griechischen Philosophen mit dem Kommentar eines Muslims lehrt. Der Kommentar ist kürzlich in Palermo von einem Schotten übersetzt worden. Der irische Professor ist übrigens ein Spezialist für jüdische Philosophie und Theologie. Ist es ein Witz? Stimmt es Ihrer Meinung nach? Nein. Doch. Das ist eine Tatsache. Besser, das ist eine historische Tatsache. Dies geschah in Neapel um 1240. Der Professor ist Petrus der Ibernier, der Philosoph hieß Aristoteles, der Kommentator ist Averroes ibn Rushd. Der Text des Aristoteles war kürzlich aus dem Arabischen ins Lateinische übersetzt worden. Der Übersetzer ist Michael Scott. Der jüdische Theologie war die von Moses Maimonides. Das war 1240 Europa. Heute würde es wie ein Witz klingen, oder? Und doch, ich war wirklich tatsächlich in Neapel vor 2 Wochen, aber ich habe keinen Petrus der Ibernier gefunden und getroffen. Wissen Sie was? Es gibt eine katholische theologische Fakultät. Wissen Sie das? Es gibt eine katholische theologische Fakultät, an der unter anderem katholischen Professoren ein Professor für islamische Theologie lehrt, eine bekannte Judaistin. Und an dieser Fakultät Katholiken, reformierte Juden und Christen gemeinsam arbeiten und forschen. Niemand gibt seine Identität auf. Ich gebe meine Identität auch nicht auf. Aber alle arbeiten zusammen. Ist es ein Witz? Nein, das ist unsere Fakultät. Und heute hat diese Fakultät die Ehre, 2 außergewöhnliche Persönlichkeiten zu ihren Doktoren zu zählen. Außergewöhnlich sowohl in intellektueller als auch in menschlicher Hinsicht. Frau Prof. Dr. Susanna Heschel, Frau Prof. Dr. Mualla Selçuk. Heute haben sich diese beiden außergewöhnlichen Stimmen unserem kleinen Chor angeschlossen. Wir sind sehr glücklich und wir sind bereit, Ihnen zuzuhören. Liebe Frau Dr. Heschel, liebe Frau Dr. Selçuk, vielen Dank, dass Sie sich bereit erklärt haben, Teil unseres Chores zu sein. Dear Dr. Heschel, dear Dr. Selçuk, thank you very much for agreeing to be part of our choir. Das Wort erteile ich nun nur meiner geschätzten Kollegin Professor Verena Lenzen. Thank you very much. Welcome.
geschätzte Ehrendoktorinnen, verehrte Anwesende. Zum ersten Mal las ich 1983 von Susannah Heschel das Buch On Being a Jewish Feminist. Als einziges Kind des großen Gelehrten Rabbiner Abraham Joshua Heschel und der Pianistin Sylvia Strauss wuchs sie in einer Atmosphäre von Wissenschaft, Kunst, Ethos und politischem Engagement auf. Seit 2005 wirkt sie als Eli Breck-Professorin für Jewish Studies am Dartmouth College. Vielfach geehrt von den USA, Kanada bis Bayern und Berlin, beeindruckt Susannah Heschel durch die Vielschichtigkeit und den Mut ihrer Bücher. Und alles, was sie veröffentlicht hat, ist innovativ. Ob es ihre Studien über den christlichen Antijudaismus und Antisemitismus sind, Theologen für Hitler, über Abraham Geiger und den jüdischen Jesus oder über deutsch-jüdische Gelehrte und den Islam. Geschätzte Kollegin Susanna Heschel, es ehrt die Theologische Fakultät der Universität Luzern, dass Sie hier und heute die Ehrendoktorin-Würde angenommen haben. Herzlichen Dank. Susanna.
Vielen Dank, Frau Professorin, meine Kollegen, Verena Lenzen, danke. Ich möchte mich bei allen Professoren und Dekanen und Studierenden und liebe Freunde, die hier sind, ich freue mich sehr, hier zu sein, and I am very grateful for the honor that you have given to me. I come to you today. Can you all hear me? Am I loud enough? I'm from New York City, so I should have a loud voice, yes? I come to you today as a descendant of a long line of distinguished rabbis, authors of major books of Hasidic piety, descendants of our teachers Moses, Amos, Isaiah, and as the daughter of a theologian who was plucked as a brand from the fires of Nazi Europe and who lost his mother and sisters in Warsaw, Auschwitz, and Treblinka. Growing up surrounded by my father's friends, German Jewish refugee scholars, I heard dinner table conversation centered on great Europe culture, poets, novelists, philosophers. The atmosphere was a combination of the horror over the destruction, the participation of scholars, and a sense that the greatness of German culture was now preserved by those in exile. I am very grateful for the recognition you are bringing to me and to my colleague, Professor Selçuk, for acknowledging the importance of our work with yours. For me personally, this is an extraordinary moment, and I am deeply moved. I accept this honor on behalf of my father and my ancestors, and for all of us who want to preserve the greatness of the extraordinary European epoch in human culture. There is a debate in the Talmud between two rabbis, Rav and Shmuel, as to whether the world was created for the sake of Moses so that he might receive the Torah, or for the sake of David, so that he might sing hymns and psalms in praise of God. The answer, of course, is that the world was created for the sake of both Torah and Psalms, as Moses says in Deuteronomy 32:1. Give ear, O heavens, let me speak. Let the earth hear the words that I utter. The rabbis explained that at that moment, Moses stood in heaven and spoke to both heaven and earth. We might ask a similar question about the purpose of theological scholarship. Do we become scholars in order to receive and transmit scripture, that is, our research findings? Or do we become scholars in order to sing psalms, that is, to inspire ourselves and others to become attuned to the wonder that is the beginning of faith? Are not both necessary? My feminist scholarship stems from my love of Judaism and my wish to know its teachings and pray deeply with my community to God. When I wrote a book on the 19th century German Jewish scholar Abraham Geiger, I realized that he lived on the margins of the scholarly world, unable to receive a professorship or publish in theological journals because he was a Jew. His position as a Jew facing Christian hegemony was analogous to mine as a woman facing patriarchy. Yet Geiger's brilliance was combined with cheerfulness and optimism that truth and justice would ultimately prevail, and that inspired me. Following that, I reconstructed the history of an anti-Semitic propaganda institute run by Protestant theologians during the Third Reich, based on archives that I found scattered throughout Germany. I discovered evidence that theologians, prominent and obscure, had been active Nazis who thought of Hitler as Christ and Jews as satanic. While there is a great satisfaction in gathering, analyzing, interpreting, and publishing the data I discovered, I had to stop myself and ask, what is the ultimate significance of this scholarship? Have I simply exposed and brought condemnation to a group of wicked theologians? How does this ugly topic fit into my life theologically? How can the data of my scholarship also inspire Psalms? Even more, how in the face of such a horrific story can I preserve my humanity? For me, my study of the awful ways religion can be exploited for ugly political purposes, such as the effort to create a synthesis of Christianity and Nazism, is a bit analogous to the experience of doubt that many religious people undergo at times. Doubt can plunge us into deep despair, disorient us from our own lives. My research on the Nazi theologians led me to despair, as if all of religion had become tainted for me. But we also know the doubt can be a gift from God that can lead us in new directions. For Franz Kafka, the door is closed, the key is lost. Yet religious people believe that there is purpose in facing the abyss. The Zohar, a medieval work of Jewish mysticism, the Zohar is more optimistic than Kafka. It says that a person is only whole when his heart is broken. The sadness of our soul may open a crevice in the wall that often seems to stand before us. I emerged from writing my book with greater clarity about wickedness, but also with longing for my faith and with a far greater appreciation for the extraordinary goodness, creativity, and inspiration that religion offers us, and the enormous courage of religious leaders who opposed Hitler. Only in religion, I believe, can the depths of all dimensions of our soul, from despair to joy, be experienced, given voice, and become tools for redeeming our world. I have left the Nazi era, and I am now writing a book on the Jewish fascination with Islam that blossomed in the 19th century. Indeed, Jews shaped the modern field of Islamic studies in Europe. So much of what I hear today is a vicious denunciation by Jews and Muslims of each other's religions, but I see that such attitudes are aberrations, and I hope can be halted by recovering a lost history. I want to make it known that in very recent times, Jewish scholars admired Islam, placed it on a pedestal, and forged an alliance between Judaism and Islam as two religions of ethical monotheism. In their view, both religions believed in one God, reject anthropomorphism, and have shaped themselves through religious law. Historical scholarship has demonstrated how deeply we are imbricated in each other's religious faith. One of the mistakes of interfaith dialogue is to speak of Judaism as an other in the mind of Christianity or Islam, and vice versa. These three religions are not other to each other. They are intertwined in a far more intimate fashion. For example, in the 9th century, as Julian Wood demonstrates, Bishop Theodor Abu Qura, living in the Abbasid Caliphate, developed an Arabic idiom to defend Christian iconography using rabbinic arguments. Medieval Muslim polemicists developed a critical biblical scholarship that was then transferred from Islam to Christian Europe via Jews and Christians, and contributed, as Chava Lazarus Yaffe has shown, to the emergence of modern critical scholarship. Modern Jewish thinkers often call Judaism the mother religion that gave birth to Christianity and Islam, which Jews often view as two somewhat wayward daughters. Judaism exists within Christianity as part of its Bible and central concepts, such as Christ, Messiah, though with a different interpretation. While 19th century Jewish scholarship viewed the Quran as a receptacle of the Bible and rabbinic commentaries, now we understand the Quran as a commentary and interpretation of those biblical passages, thanks to the recent scholarship of Angelika Neuwirth. Historical scholarship is also revealing how much of Christianity exists within Judaism. Clemens Leonhard has argued that the Dayenu poem of the Passover Haggadah is a pointed rejoinder to the improperia of Good Friday. Israel Yuval has demonstrated that Jewish exile originated not due to a Roman edict. There was no edict of expulsion from the land of Israel, but arose in the 5th century in response to Christian theological assertions. Marc Chagall's series of crucifixion paintings are a small fraction of the many Jewish uses of Christian symbols to express Jewish experience. Each religion lives inside the other, whether in polemic, appropriation, or appreciation, which makes their relationships unique and intimate and gives rise to the loves and hatreds that plague all intimacies. Interfaith dialogue must recognize our intimacies and be able to translate the results of historical scholarship into theological terms. For instance, Barbara U. Meyer, in her recent book, asks how Christian theology can translate the results of 2 centuries of scholarship on the Jewishness of the historical Jesus into theological understandings of Christology. During the past century, much has been accomplished in interfaith dialogue. Now is a time to consider new directions. What should be the agenda for the 21st century? First, we should ask, who is representing us? Who speaks in the name of our religious faith, calling to God like Isaiah, "Here I am, send me"? Participants in most ecumenical dialogues are overwhelmingly men, as in the recent Abrahamic Accords, and that needs to change. Clerics and theologians should be accompanied by scholars of religion. Critics within religious communities have to be included, starting with feminists, because the feminist critique of religion is one of the most important ethical problems facing every single religious community. And interfaith dialogue should address not only religious pride, but also areas of practice where we have not lived up to our own principles of human dignity. Too often, my father wrote, faith and a lack of mercy enter a union out of which bigotry is born. The presumption that my faith, my motivation is pure and holy, while the faith of those who differ, even within my own community, is impure and unholy. Bigotry is not the exclusive possession of conservatives or liberals. All of us are afflicted with the challenge of respecting those who disagree with us. According to the teachings of Hasidism, the Eastern European Jewish pietist movement of the 19th century, religious faith has to be authentic to who we are. Each person is unique, and each person's religious expression is unique. The purpose of interfaith dialogue is not to debate or to try to convince people to worship and believe as I do. Rather, it is for us to serve as inspiring models of reverence and spiritual nobility. We speak with one another not to offer proofs, but to serve as witnesses. For me, it is often easier to be in dialogue with Christians and Muslims than with certain Jews. The crucial problem today is not interfaith dialogue, but interreligious dialogue. Why is it so difficult for adherents of the same religion to speak to one another? Hasidic Jews with liberals, cardinals with feminists. A prominent Orthodox rabbi in England was delighted to engage with the Dalai Lama, but refused to speak to a Limud conference that included liberal and secular, as well as Orthodox Jews, nor attend the funeral of Rabbi Hugo Grin, an Auschwitz survivor, because he was a Reform rabbi. The crucial issue is to respect religiosity, even if we disagree with theology. The world is turning to us as religious leaders, theologians, and scholars for guidance as we struggle with crucial responsibilities. Throughout all societies, we see growing racism, contempt for the earth, destruction of water and soil, denigration of women and non-binary individuals, violence, hatred, indifference, corruption, smug self-satisfaction. Addressing these problems requires our interfaith collaboration. How are we to be religious when we are living in a neoliberal society that shows contempt for vulnerability, for dependency on our governments for food, shelter, and health care, all the while exploited by big business interests that seem to run the country unimpeded, making billions while polluting our land, air, and water and infecting us with opioids? Our government should be ashamed. And instead, it shames our vulnerability and exalts financial success while we glorify billionaires as if they were the modern day equivalents of medieval saints. what is the obligation of religion in such circumstances? Racism and enslavement are ways of thinking about ownership of other human beings and about hierarchies of human beings. All religions express their legacy of enslavement when women are treated as men's possession in marriage and divorce laws, and in religious attitudes toward rape, sexual abuse, and harassment, and sexual relations of all genres. As Christina Sharp writes, quote, living in the wake of slavery is living the afterlife of property. Religion has too often been too intimate with racism. Scholars have shown us that the very concept of religion was configured to make possible European imperialism and colonialism. In Nazi Germany, Aryan racial identity was certified by bringing baptismal certificates for 3 generations of a family. Some theologians in Nazi Germany argued that Galatians 3:28, in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, proves that baptism does not erase racial identity any more than it erases gender. In the state of Israel, religion was used to alter ethnic identity when Arab Jews were forced to become pious to distinguish them from Arabs. I grew up during the 1960s civil rights movement in the United States, and my father was very close to Martin Luther King, Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, and other leaders of the movement. I watched as the words of the Hebrew prophets converted hard, racist hearts into hearts of repentance, angry people into people of dignity. It was inconceivable to me that anyone who read the Bible could be racist. Of grave concern is the terrible mood around the world. Polarization, anger, ressentiment, and grievance have led to anarchist revolts against democracy and social institutions. America and Europe feel as though they may be on the eve of destruction. The greatest obligation facing religious leaders today is to change the mood into one of gratitude, welcome to our neighbors, and respect for the inviolable dignity of human beings. In the words of the Swiss Federal Constitution, let us, in the name of Almighty God, strengthen liberty, democracy, independence, and peace in a spirit of solidarity and openness toward the world, with responsibility toward creation and respect for diversity. Too often we polarize ourselves as oppressors and victims. Jacques Derrida once asked, why are Christians constantly asking Jews for forgiveness? In responding to the Shoah, Christians sometimes seem to be shifting between efforts to protect Christian dominance or masochistically accepting all blame. Neither is effective. For Jews, denouncing Christianity for the Shoah must never blot out our memory of those Christians and Muslims during World War II who saved our lives and were themselves murdered for it. To be locked into a struggle of victims and oppressors, blame and resentment on the right and on the left is dangerous politically and destructive religiously. Religious leaders have to show us how to move beyond the Hegelian struggle to the death for recognition in which only one can live, the other must die. This is a fantasy, an imaginary construct that only one can live, that my life depends upon my destruction of you, that there is no salvation outside the church, that the Jewish failure to convert is a mortal blow to Christian self-esteem and power. In other words, it emerges out of Christian shame, especially original shame over having originated within Judaism. On the Jewish side, there is shame at having been overtaken by the daughter religions. The introjection into Judaism of key aspects of Christianity and numerous Jewish distortions of biblical thought in Greek philosophical terms inherited from Islam are recognized by historians, but not by the gatekeepers who define Judaism. The apologetic definition of Judaism as ethical monotheism was also a denigration of biblical teachings of God's body and visibility and of unique rabbinic traditions of tzorach gavoha, of God's need of us. While Freud begins with the Oedipal wish of the son to murder the father, ignoring the father's unconscious wish to murder his son, interfaith work has to recognize that motherness plays a central role in theology and society. When Judaism calls itself the mother religion, how does it cope with being rejected by its daughter religions and their impulse to matricide? The rise of neo-Marcionism led to a seesaw structure in some elements of Christian theology. Christianity is only elevated only if Judaism can be denigrated. This is apparent in the way the Hebrew Bible is read versus the New Testament. The latter is God's word, and the former is a record of a primitive era. When some feminist theologians claimed that Jesus was a feminist who liberated women because Jewish women were so terribly oppressed in his day, we have a seesaw theology. By contrast, modern Jewish thought has a perichoretic quality. Judaism is defined in relation to Christianity and Islam in a triune configuration. Until World War II, many Jewish scholars, such as Abraham Geiger, allied Judaism with Islam as a polemic against Christianity. Others, such as Franz Rosenzweig, created an alliance of Judaism with Christianity against Islam. Rather than trying to erase or abandon that Hegelian-fed imaginary construct that one must die if the other is to live, we might instead recognize what the psychoanalyst Melanie Klein called the paranoid position, that it exists in each of us and perhaps in every religion as a component of the vulnerability that we all experience. Interfaith dialogue is a hope to overcome that struggle and recognize that the flourishing of one brings the flourishing of all. No religion is an island, my father wrote. Rather than viewing religions as other to one another, we would be more historically accurate if we acknowledge that Islamic law liberalized Jewish law, as Gideon Lipson has shown. If we end the formation of alliances for the purpose of excluding a third religion, if we recognize that through the shaping of alliances, we co-create a moral third. That is, together we create in our interfaith relationship a strong sense of what we most value and what inspires us, and we appeal to that moral third, that repository of values and inspiration to constitute ourselves, to redefine our goals, and recognize the full subjectivity of one another. The theoretical matrix of thirdness, co-created through mutual recognition, is given rise to broader consequences involving acknowledgement in efforts to resolve conflicts and recover from social and political injustice. For example, in post-apartheid South Africa and post-genocide Rwanda, and in trying to resolve the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. Legacies of atrocity require witnesses able to listen and acknowledge in ways that religion can understand. As Pablo Polishuk writes, thirdness is where empathy takes place. In our interfaith relationships, we create with each other a moral third to establish the principles to which we all aspire, but to help us overcome our shame of failure and our shame of success, our fear of knowing as well as our fear of suffering. Engagement generates our compassion toward others and ourselves, allowing us to end the projection of blame onto others. This is a far better matrix for religious teachings and communities to take shape. Alliances empower us in our struggle for justice. We scholars of religion have an exceptionally important role to play in our world today. We are in difficult days, politically and economically, a period in which the humanities in particular are needed above all. Many of us will have to rely on our inner resources, feeling unprotected or even betrayed by the caprices of economic and political crises. We need philosophy, art, history, and theology. These are precious assets. We need to explore our inner lives, learn more deeply who we are, what we believe, how we can dream and reflect, not in isolation, but with our community of fellow explorers. Our lives are grown difficult. How might we attend to our souls? The artist, Sister Mary Carita, used to say, "This day is given to us. From it, we make life." Interpreting a verse in Genesis, and man became a living soul. Rav in the Talmud says, this means the soul that God gave you, keep it alive. Religion is a word that is thrown around too cavalierly these days. We as scholars in the field know to be careful and measured in our judgments, and we must also be precise. For too many people, devotion to religion is measured by their political interests, their nationalism, or their willingness to be martyred for their beliefs. Clergy, seeking wealth and power, proclaim a theocracy when in fact it is a totalitarian regime cloaked in clerical masquerade. All of this is fraud. Let us call it by its name. Those Protestants who sought a Nazification of Christianity were frauds. Those seeking martyrdom or the murder of others in the supposed name of religion are frauds committing the greatest of sins. May we go forth and speak loudly and with clarity about religion. May we always remember the words of the Hadith. The learned man's ink is as precious as the martyr's blood. Always remember that our ink is powerful. We're gathered at a university, and we have to ask, what is the ultimate significance of education? God calls upon us to cultivate our awareness of the greatness and mystery of life, to remember that each person is an image of God, the only image we have. Let us seek in our work moments of holiness and make our lives instruments for perfecting the world. We have information to convey, but a teacher must also respect the delicate, sacred interiority of each student, in the words of the great Frank O'Malley, professor of English at the University of Notre Dame. Teaching is a sacred trust. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of the Lord, says Job. Let me conclude. We human beings will not perish for lack of information, but we may perish for lack of appreciation. Intellectual truth is not sufficient, and the love taught by religion cannot stand alone. God is in need of us. Scholarship requires virtue, integrity, wisdom in choosing the right topic, and a certainty in the heart that our work is important. Let us appreciate our work, aware that it bears ultimate significance. May this wonderful day at this university be a source of blessing for all of us. May this world of ours be renewed and perfected by the great tasks as scholars and teachers and students that we have together assumed. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm happy we have a few minutes for some questions. If anyone would like to ask me. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Vielen Dank für diesen wunderbaren und beeindruckenden Vortrag. Sie dürfen jetzt gerne eine Frage auf Englisch stellen. Sie können
Oder Deutsch.
Oder Deutsch.
Oder Deutsch.
Oder Deutsch. Dann bitte ich
Ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch auch. So,
Genau.
Sie sind gern eingeladen, auf Deutsch die Fragen zu stellen.
Wunderbar.
Nicht aber in Schweizerdeutsch. Bitte.
Thank you very much for your speech. It was very inspiring. How do you, as a member of a theological faculty, engage with the larger university in an age of religious illiteracy when the larger university largely rejects religion? And I know it does in the U.S.
And you know what?
And I know that it does in the U.S.
In the U.S. Are you from the U.S.?
Oh, Canada.
Canada. Uh-huh. So what do we do when the rest of the university doesn't understand that we are, in fact, the foundation, that there is no body without a soul, or, in fact, as we heard earlier today, Jacob, I forgot your last name now. No, it was a talk. There was a talk earlier today about the question is this: how can we have all the extraordinary technology that's been developed in recent years, in recent decades? How can we have this without a sense of ethical responsibility? Who's in charge when we have drones dropping bombs? You know, who is responsible for the mobile eye when the Tesla car runs somebody over and kills them? So, of course, technology has gotten completely out of hand, and the theological faculties that were, in fact, always the foundation. In fact, half the students enrolled at German universities until the mid-19th century were enrolled in the theological faculties. It was the center. And now we've had a period of eclipse for about 150 years, a little more, and we need to go back to that. And perhaps part of the problem is the theologians have not engaged the problems that are, in fact, facing the other departments and faculties at the university. So we need to have not just an interfaith dialogue, but perhaps an interdisciplinary dialogue. They need us, and we need to demonstrate that. But yes, I agree with you also, of course, about the illiteracy that you mentioned, which is a large cultural problem. There's more to say, but let me, since time is short, we can talk more, perhaps. Does anyone else want to ask or make a comment? No?
Hello, my name is Chaim Druckmann. I'm a rabbi here at the Jewish community in Lucerne, and I just want to give you a big, big thank you.
I'm sorry?
I want to give you a big thank you for coming here. I've been here before, but it was very, very meaningful for me, your speech, and I'm just grateful. I have a few questions, but I think it's too short over here. I will ask for your time maybe after to hear from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zunächst vielen Dank für diesen wunderbaren Vortrag. Eine konkrete Frage. In den letzten Jahren sind 2 Dokumente erschienen von jüdisch-orthodoxer Seite, To do the will of our Father in Heaven und Between Jerusalem and Rome. Im Gegensatz zu Dabru Emet 2000 waren bei diesen orthodoxen Erklärungen, die durchaus heterogen sind, ja, und repräsentativ, aber es waren noch keine Frauen beteiligt, geschweige denn Feministinnen. Welche Bedeutungen haben aber diese 2 jüngsten Erklärungen von jüdisch-orthodoxer Seite für Sie und wie schätzen Sie das auch in Amerika ein? Dankeschön.
So thank you very much, Professor Lenzen. I think the document Dabur Emet has had a much bigger resonance in Europe than in the United States, and a much bigger resonance among Christians than among Jews. It's very striking. I think most American Jews have never heard of it, but I find it frequently discussed here in Europe. And part of it is simply the desire for an engagement, for someone to talk to, for Jews to respond. The absence of women in formulating these documents is a sign of a profound problem of trying to show that one's religion is perfect, no problem, everything is fine, because once women become involved, they will raise questions. But it's actually the raising of questions that constitutes, first of all, Judaism, but I would say also Christianity and Islam. That is, we debate, we argue. This is why, you know what Thomas Bauer wrote in his book, The Culture of Ambiguity, this is why the vowels were removed from the Quran, in order to create ambiguity and in order to generate debate and discussion and interpretation. This is the vitality of religion. If you remove debate and insist that this is a singular answer, then it's, in a sense, a kind of a death blow to a religion. And that's terribly sad to witness. Are we witnessing that now? Are religions, in a sense, doing this to themselves and being suicidal by ignoring debate? That would be unfortunate. But, you know, I have mixed feelings about the content of these statements as well. We can talk about that. I think there is a missed opportunity in those statements, again, by trying to formulate, in fact, theological statements that meet a political need. That is, too often, interfaith dialogue becomes liberals talking to liberals, conservatives talking to conservatives, wanting to make some kind of an alliance on political grounds and formulating a theological position that will make that possible. And to me, that's a form of corruption, of religious theological corruption, and it's very unfortunate. So I hope the 21st century will bring us a new vitality, let's say.
Vielen Dank für Ihre Fragen.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, mein Name ist Erdal Toprakyaran. Ich bin seit etwas mehr als einem Jahr in Luzern für die islamische Theologie zuständig und habe heute das große Vergnügen, unsere zweite Ehrendoktorin, Frau Professorin Mualla Selçuk, vorzustellen. Frau Selçuk studierte an der sehr renommierten Theologischen Fakultät der Universität Ankara islamische Theologie und islamische Religionspädagogik und anschließend promovierte sie in Ankara mit einer Dissertation zum Thema religiöse Verhaltensmuster bei Kindern im Vor- und Grundschulalter. 1992 habilitierte sich Frau Selçuk und wurde 1999 zur Professorin berufen. Von 2002 bis 2008 leitete sie als Dekanin die Theologische Fakultät der Universität Ankara, wo sie auch weiterhin lehrt. Von 2001 bis 2008 war Frau Selçuk als erste Frau Mitglied im Religionsrat des Präsidiums für religiöse Angelegenheiten der Türkei und von 2003 bis 2006 Mitglied im UNESCO-Komitee Kulturen im Dialog. Des Weiteren ist sie Vollmitglied beim International Seminar on Religious Education and Values. Sie ist Mitglied der European Association for World Religions in Education und Mitglied beim Beratungsstab des World Conference on Religion and Peace. Ich selbst habe Frau Selçuk vor ungefähr 13 Jahren kennengelernt. Wir haben damals sehr intensiv an verschiedenen christlich-islamischen und deutsch-türkischen Projekten zusammengearbeitet. Wir haben an verschiedenen Publikationen zusammengearbeitet. Übrigens sind diese Publikationen, einige wenige exemplarische Publikationen unserer zwei Ehrendoktorinnen draußen auf einem Büchertisch ausgestellt. Können Sie sich gerne nachher anschauen. Wie gesagt, hat sie aber darüber hinaus sehr viele Publikationen eben in den Bereichen interreligiöser Dialog, auch islamische Religionspädagogik und ist insgesamt auch enorm engagiert gewesen, damals, als ich sie kennengelernt habe und auch heute noch eben im interreligiösen Dialog. Was sehr beeindruckend ist, dass sie eben auch als wohl einzige Frau bisher es geschafft hat, sich ganz an die Spitze einer islamisch-theologischen Institution hochzuarbeiten. Das ist vor ihr keiner Frau gelungen und leider auch, nachdem sie dann das Amt 2008 übergeben hat an einen männlichen Kollegen, ist das auch keiner anderen Frau mehr gelungen. Also von daher zeigt das eben, dass sie auch eine sehr durchsetzungskräftige Frau ist, dass sie auch eben nicht vor schwierigen Diskussionen, Debatten zurückschreckt. Und ich habe das mehrfach auch gesehen, wie sehr sie auch von männlichen Kollegen in der Türkei, aber auch in der sonstigen islamischen Welt eben respektiert wurde, als Autorität anerkannt wurde. Und es wäre natürlich wünschenswert, wenn sich andere Musliminnen ein Beispiel an ihr nehmen würden und ebenfalls versuchen würden, eben als Dekanin oder in sonstiger Funktion sich stärker einzubringen und auch diese Herausforderungen anzunehmen gegen die ansonsten doch sehr männlich dominierten Felder der islamischen Theologie. Sie wurde dann letztes Jahr mit dem Bundesverdienstorden der Bundesrepublik Deutschland ausgezeichnet und es hat mich außerordentlich gefreut, dass sie nun auch die Ehrendoktorwürde der Universität Luzern bekommen und angenommen hat. Und ich hoffe, dass das sie weiterhin bestärkt auf ihrem Weg, denn wir haben natürlich gerade im islamischen Bereich solche Frauen, solche Persönlichkeiten bitter nötig. Nun freue ich mich sehr auf Ihren Vortrag, Frau Kollegin Selçuk, und Sie haben das Wort.
Hello, and I greet you all with great respect and start with Selamun Alaikum, Shalom Aleichem, and peace be upon you. I'm truly honored and humbled to be here with you today and accept this honorary doctorate degree from the University of Luzern. I am aware of the incredible academic quality of the Faculty of Theology with its high standards and enriching experiences gained through education that deal with theology from the perspective of different religions and faith, enabling living together peacefully in a diverse society. The faculty's educational endeavors affirm that peaceful coexistence in today's world is critically dependent upon the success of interreligious dialogue. I am asked to present my work on interreligious dialogue. I am so glad to do that, since dialogue is about encountering the other in one's own terms. It feels appropriate to introduce myself and present some of interreligious projects which I am being part of as a signal for the centrality of interreligious dialogue as a resource for the world peace. I also know that telling a story aloud to another is a moment of deep encounter and a special way of befriending. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The Faculty of Theology, the colleagues, and the team members who put effort on this event. I owe you all a deep depth of gratitude and thanks, and thank you all for listening to my story. Thank you wholeheartedly. The title of my speech will present a particular interpretation, theological interpretation of Islam that guides my teaching and governs my learning in encounter. Advocating such a title requires also giving a full and honest account of religious background from which this interpretation is advanced. So, first, I would like to, you hear this on the board. My speech will be first my search for the meaning of the diversity, and then I'm going to present you some insight from the Quran, that leads my teaching, and then some examples with Christian friends in terms of interreligious dialogue, current examples, and I would like to conclude with some points, what I learned from this encounter and what I can offer in terms of interreligious encounter. Let me first ask the question, where we dwell in common. I think maybe the seed of the idea of encounter was planted in my childhood years, even before I knew about the idea in theological sense, yes. I grew up in a multicultural and multi-religious society. Mardin is a city in southeastern Turkey, where religions, language, cultures meet. In my childhood, I had friends who spoke different language and who had different religions. I played, went to school, sometimes got along, and sometimes fought with them, just like any child. Sometimes we shared painted eggs or candies, or shared small toys or dolls with each other. We grew up together, and in a way, we brought each other up. My father used to say, keep in mind that you are on common holy ground with your friends. The friends he was referring to were my Christian friends. I wondered for many years what this common holy ground could be. Could it be the actual physical common ground? Yes, that we were together. We play in the backyard of the mosque or the physical common ground of the church. We took shelter at times. Could it be the blending of sounds of church bells with the azan? Azan is the call for prayer from mosque in the city of Mardin. My father once spoke of a new priest that came to a monastery in Mardin. He mentioned that two of them recited the Surah Maryam together. Maryam is the name of Mary, mother of Jesus. There is a separate chapter in the Quran called Surah Maryam. And Mary is the only woman mentioned in the Quran directly by name. I then thought that this common holy ground must be the Surah Maryam. At a certain point, however, I must have stopped inquiring about this common holy ground because I remembered little more about it. That's until I began my studies in Faculty of Divinity at Ankara University. There, I learned new things about this common ground. Yes, please. I learned that the Holy Quran refers to Jews and Christians as people of the book. It further describes their holy books as bearing the qualities of light, divinity, and guidance. Yes, please. Yeah, maybe if you push more, then it will come. Yeah. As you can see from the verses from here, the Quran defines the previous holy books as light, illuminating humanity, providing mercy and guidance for them. It considers them to be the words of God and sources distinguishing right from wrong. The Quran also confirms the previous holy books. And it says, we sent the scripture in truth, confirming the scripture that came before it, and guarding it in safety. End of the quote from the Quran. And then I learned that the Quran invites the people of the book to a common word between us. Yes. These verses made the words encounters with diversity like magical words for me. I started to ask the question, when pursuing a common ground, what is the purpose of our diversity? Why are there these differences among religious people? So why are we different from each other? God could have created us all the same if God had wished to do so. The Quran says that. Thus, differences and diversity seemed to me to be based on God's will. For this reason, I conducted studies on how the Quran addresses diversity. Passages on the core and essence values on the Quran, which spoke at diversity as an opportunity for friendship rather than dispute, impressed me a lot. I came to realize that diversity is caused by God. Verses in the Quran reveal that God simply asked people to understand each other. The Holy Book of Islam, the Quran, calls that platform of mutual understanding and interaction ta'aruf. You see the verse on the screen and the full translation of the Quranic verse in hand, which will be the focus of the remaining part of my speech and the core value of my understanding in the project which I am going to present you. The Quran says that, O people, we created you all from a single pair of a male and female, and made you into races and tribes, so that you should know each other. You should know each other. That's the word ta'aruf in the Quran, in Arabic ta'aruf. Verily, the most honor of you in the sight of God are the ones most mindful of God. God has full knowledge and is well acquainted with all things. Thus, the concept ta'aruf has become the core of my teaching philosophy for many years. When thinking about the relation with the different, I profited from this concept. Here, I will briefly explain and hope that my explanation will clarify what I understand from the word ta'aruf, that to know each other. Ta'aruf, the key word presented by the Quranic verse, means that to know to recognize, to explore, to understand each other. This encourages a partnership role between different people in knowing each other and sharing the knowledge and recognition of each other. And this is, in a sense, leads a culture of pluralism and tolerance in societies. An interpretation of the Quranic verse promoting ta'aruf teach us that each person is created by the same formula. That human persons are equal, yes, in terms of their biological creation, but also that human persons are equal in terms of their value and dignity. Since their equality in the process of creation is essential. As well, the social affiliations and identities which are gained later are provided as different ways of knowledge and cultures in order to make them know each other and find better ways of communication and cooperation with one another for the good of everyone. In line with the idea of equality and pluralism, the concept of ta'aruf that you see on the board, the ta'aruf requires the condemnation of all prejudice based on the basis of tribalism or racism, since the main point is the equality in human society. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have warned against the idea of superiority of a particular tribe by saying that everyone is from Adam and Adam is from clay. That's no one has any reason for claiming superiority against another, and everyone is equal, as the process of the creation proves. Then when we go through the Quran, we see that the primary goal is supported, the ta'aruf I shortly explained to you, but you will have more explanation in the text. The primary goal is supported in different Quranic discourses. The verses state that humans are created by God from God's breath and the image of God. This is evidence of God's existence and power. Whoever looks at human finds a way to God and remembers that humans are the most dignified creatures of all. Holy Quran also refers to these differences as evidence of God's existence and power. For instance, I think we have one more verse. Yes, you put it. Thank you. And it says, among his signs is the creation of earth and heavens, and the diversity of languages and colors. And also there are truly messages in these differences between languages and colors and this diversity for those who know. And this expression also for me is so impressive. Those who know what, who are they, what they know. So this is my point in my teaching philosophy and in my understanding of encounter and dialogue. And I want to begin with, but first, I am fully aware that the mediating conditions that shape religion are more strong than the doctrines that shape up the content of religion. We live in a fallen world in which violence is common, life is uncertain, and injustice is widespread. We live not only amid an ever-increasing pluralism, but as some theologians point out, in an insistently conflictual pluralism, not only between each other, different religions, but as our professor, my colleague said that, within our faith, within our own religion. So how easy or difficult is then to present the topic of encounter to our students or with each other? How easy or difficult then is to liberate ourselves from the power of fear and ignorance, to free ourselves from the powerful of rightness. I am blessed to meet interesting people from different backgrounds, near and far. And I can easily tell you that I learned how to make dialogue by making dialogue. Each encounter and each dialogue has taught me something, shaped my perspective, and helped me to reflect on my tradition as I could not do it by myself. This generous way of being with one another, the most human activity, has taken me deeper to deal with the meaning of life and the nature of the ultimate order of things. But again, I raise some questions. What is encounter going to say to someone who sees a stranger a potential threat? What is encounter going to say to somebody who believes that he or she has the ultimate truth and has nothing to learn from the other? What is encounter going to say to a person if they cannot resist the drive to search for people like themselves? And what is encounter going to say to those who see their neighbors as enemies and see themselves as blameless or representative of the truth? What will be then in its heart of our education? I ask this question because I am a religious educator, and I have also an answer. I believe the answer is our head. It is the core of our energy is faithful people in encounter, like what we are doing now. Let me illustrate by means of 3 international projects of dialogue I am involved in. I am convinced dialogue must be with people. The most important factor for interreligious work is good personal relationship. The projects I am going to present you here are more than products of expertise in the field. They are about individuals who have given their commitment, time, and skills through a labor of love. They have chosen to participate in this project because they believe that the power of collaboration and love will challenge and interrupt the rigidity of religious ideological discourse. It may help to create a safe or even a brave space for a deep learning across tradition, to develop reflective openness to new ideas and values, while at the same time maintaining reflective loyalty to their own faith and tradition, and that's knowing self and other. The reason for introducing these 3 projects is that in each project I will introduce you, I will develop a number of issues and make some specific remarks related to interreligious dialogue. Those are not my own work, as I told you. Those are the work of the colleagues. We cooperate together for many years. I believe this kind of collaboration will have a positive impact to move beyond the rhetoric of the dialogue and to nurture authentic dialogues that provide deeper understanding of self and others. It is in this manner that interreligious education is my field, can contribute to assisting learning with the task of understanding their own religious identity and face what is essential to our existence as human in relationship with one another, which I believe a very necessary step to any view of life and any way of life, or it is indeed a stance for peaceful living. I will present you 3 projects in the frame of the allotted time. One would be, first I will go just quickly and then I will present one by one. Just first, this will be the dictionary. No, we can go back again and then I will explain it. The first project would be the Dictionary of Encounter, Basic Terms of Christianity and Islam. This dictionary is a clear, authentic example of encounter, acquaintanceship, and understanding between Christianity and Islam. This book brings Christians and Muslims closer to the main foundation of one another's religions, creating the conditions through the concepts to understand one another better while promoting a culture of harmony and coexistence. This is the aim of the project. The second one will be human being in Christianity and Islam. Together, Christian and Muslim theologians, each from the point of their own religion, elaborate how these two faith traditions contribute to the historically evolved understanding and the future development of what it means to be human. The reason for them was obvious. Our wholeness and uniqueness as human beings can only be pursued in encounter. We make encounters because that's who we are. We are encounters-making beings. We become fully human through concretely meaningful response to the other, its person, place, or thing. What makes us human arises in our faithful responses to everything, and of course, everyone. Last and least, I will give an overview of an Islamic worldview project. The project will explain that worldview of any religion cannot be simply the result of its believers' attempts to interpret the tradition, but the believer of a certain faith must accept new input from interfaith encounter and critical approaches to the traditions. Just shortly, I will show you this project on screen and what I learned from them. And at the end, I will come to some conclusion in terms of religious education and for the success of interreligious dialogue. And the first project, yes, thank you, Mustafa. You'll see it on screen, and it is on the table outside. A project has been a journey of 7 years. It became two groups of scholars, one German, one Turkish, starting a project to document the concept of two different religious worldviews in two different cultural contexts. The product was the Dictionary of Encounter. As I said that this book is an initial milestone on the path towards exploring of major key terms drawn from Christianity and Islam. But much more has taken place in 7 years. Throughout this period, we began our journey in an official manner, and as scholars, we initially and strongly defended our own positions, but things changed over these 7 years of our work. We began to grow together. We began to find more common ground. We began to understand, appreciate, and value each other's view. We became colleagues and friends. In essence, we achieved what is at the heart of real encounter, a greater knowledge and a deeper respect of self and other. And our dialogue certainly was not always one of union, harmony, or even complementary, but with much of tension. As a matter of fact, at each point of dialogue, understanding and misunderstanding are intertwined, yet being fully present, listening attentively, being mutually critical and enriching, keep the theology of encounter honest. It's a true dialogue when that develops in what the verse ta'aruf, as I presented you from the Quran, as mutual understanding. The dictionary project, I believe, offers a welcome solution to the growing need for a common language in interfaith dialogue, particularly between the two Abrahamic faiths in our modern pluralistic society. And next, please, Mustafa. The next project, just shortly, I will mention about it. And you will see in the screen 6 more books. During these 7 years, the scholars involved in the project, we were 54 from Muslim part and about 30 from Christian and other young scholars and interpreters, and all this was a big project under the initiative of Ankara University and Eugen Bizer Foundation in Germany. And this project inspired us, and we created 6 books, 6 more books you will see in the screen. Both are Turkish and German, and both are from the Christian perspective and from Muslim perspective, and multicultural perspective, not only from the, let's say, from the text, but also from the philosophy, from sociology, psychology, and historical perspective. And this project inspired us. Another project, you will see this human being in Christianity of Islam. The question was that was an anthropological question in this regard. Whether and how human beings are able to understand one another if they come from very different cultures. Looking at this query, the response was found in neither one nor in the other of the tradition, and nor in both taken together, but where we found in their interchange, in their exchanging the view. This interchange liberates the creativity of new meaning, the discovery of new insight, which in my tradition, and I know that in Christianity and in Judaism and in all traditions, we have the same explanation. But Ibn Miskawayh says that in the 10th century, Ibn Miskawayh, it's known, Ibn Miskawayh, the third teacher. In Islamic education and philosophy, Mustafa knows better that, Aristotle is the first teacher, we call it Muallim Awal. Farabi is the second teacher, Muallim Thani, and Ibn Miskawayh, my favorite scholar, educator, is Muallim Thalith, that's the third teacher in Islamic tradition. And Ibn Miskawayh refers to a term, al-hikmatul khalida, that means eternal wisdom. And this project reminds us this eternal wisdom. What I mean by that? Contained within the faiths, teaching and learning practices of the religions are the great shared themes of human experiences. The search for meaning of life, the quest for the truth, discerning between good and evil, freedom, responsibility, suffering, death, capacity of human being for love and hate, kindness, cruelty, hope, despair, guilt, forgiveness, and so on. To be human is to encounter these universal human conditions of life. This book project explored these themes from two religions respectively and provided insight for their interpretations in life situation. And the third one, the last but not the least, this project also lasted almost 7 years between a Christian, a scholar from Canada, Professor John Volk from the University of New Brunswick, and he's among us now. Thank you for coming here, John. In this project, a group of young, old scholars from different background, Quran studies, religious studies, women's studies, cultural studies, Muslim scholars at Ankara University, and a Christian, John Volk, a voice from the outside, perhaps representative of numerous voices worldwide, but especially from the Western world, seeks to understand and challenge Islam. And almost 5 workshops by John Volk approach took place in the University of Ankara. This project does not seek to compare the tradition, Christianity and Islam, or search for similarity or differences. It's not a lexicon or dictionary. It doesn't intend to reveal doctrines, creeds, or strength, weakness in the two. No. It asked question from outside. Group members joined, we can maybe move. You will see some pictures from this project. Oh, this is, we were so lucky that we could present it. The dictionary, the lexicon to Pope Francis. That was a moment of grace for me, yes. And you will see the scholar from Ankara University and Professor John Volk asked questions. Rare were readily prescribed answers given to questions posed. Rather, time was taken to carefully consider, think, and reflect on responses. Questions took group members into areas previously unexplored. In turn, group members uncovered a dynamic Islam, one quite capable of enlivening them, meeting new challenges of the present, countering the harshest of the criticism, and breathing new life into teaching that at times are considered static, definitive, and prescriptive. And with regard to interpretation of the text, this project helped us to make clear distinction between what the Quran says and or other sacred books of any religious faith, and one's particular interpretation of it, between Quranic injunction and traditional teaching, between religious principle and cultural dictates. I'm sure that other concern and further points could be added. You see another picture. This is, he passed away, a Jewish scholar, Professor Sachs and John Hall. They are two very distinguished scholars. I remember them with gratitude and respect. I learned a lot from them. John Hall was passed away, and Yakov Jack as well. And in the middle, there's the representative of Diyanet in Turkey at that time when we met in Turkey and had a very, very big interfaith dialogue meeting. Of course, there are you have lots of experience, I am sure. That was, let's say, a brief look to my work and what I learned from this encounter. I will present you 4 points at the end of my presentation today, which helped me to develop and enhance my understanding of dialogue and ta'aruf. And I produced a book now, Teaching Islam in a Diverse Society, the Philosophy of Ta'aruf. And I know that when projects find their way into practice, can have a lasting impact and enhance learning effects. That's why I would like to share with you 4 important points which education cannot avoid making prior in fostering dialogue among different religions and faith. The first one, you can push, it will come, yes, what I call 3R. That is holding the conviction that dialogue should be conducted in respectable, responsible, and reflective way. The second one is stimulating discussion and deepening insight into what it means to be human. There is always some basis for understanding through shared human experience. Establishing hermeneutical understanding, the third one, on how we see each other's cultural heritage, religious traditions, sacred scriptures in a world of violent extremism, to disclosing the possibility of living together differently but in harmony. And last, enhancing side-by-side and collaborative works on important issues in the public square, giving guidance and direction of faithful wisdom on some of the most complex and controversial issues human face now. You know that, this pandemic and all other problems. With this and more consideration in mind, I may conclude with a verse from the Quran. Quote, "The East and West belong to God. Wherever you turn, there is the face of God. For God, all-embracing, all-knowing." End of the quote from the Surah Baqarah. The more we see each other as equal participants created by God's hands, the more we see that the issues are connected, because we are connected. And at the end of the day, I want to offer a prayer for encounter. O God, who guides us, remind us that the face of each other reflect your face, that we are water with one water, that we need each other to learn more about your perfect love and mercy. Thank you very much.
Do you hear me? No. So maybe I can use this one. I can use this one. Yeah. So, first of all, thank you very much, Professor Selçuk, for your presentation. And again, we are very honored to have you here. Now, our dear audience has the opportunity to ask you some questions.
Sure, I am happy.
And I would encourage you to do so. So, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, Sie haben jetzt die Möglichkeit, Fragen an Professorin Selçuk zu stellen. Und ich würde Sie gerne darum bitten, diese auf Englisch zu stellen und eben direkt an Professorin Selçuk zu richten. Ja, vielen Dank. Haben wir eine erste Frage? Ja.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you for being here in Lucerne. I was surprised in a positive way, I would say. Not surprised, sorry, the word is, I was happy to see that you started with a verse from the Quran. Because sometimes it seems that in the public sphere, when we talk about interfaith dialogue, we just want to forget our identity, our belief, even in a sacred text, for example, as the Quran, to find a common ground, as you said, which then stops to be holy because we don't, in a certain sense, we take away our own definition of holiness to just talk about what is common without what is precisely ours as faithful, as committing believers to a certain tradition, to a certain faith. So the question I have is, how much your own faith, or how much is faith important, one's specific faith important in dialogue with others concretely? In a certain sense, are we to be more, are we to deny our own tradition in a certain sense, or are we to give more space to our own tradition? I can give you an example. If I dialogue with someone as a Christian myself, it's because it's a commandment of God to love my neighbor. So how much of one's faith should stay in the religious dialogue, in interfaith dialogue? I hope the question was clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. First, you're being happy with the text. I want to say a few words on that, and I'm thinking on your question, which is a very crucial question. There are lots of points to start with, but my way of looking to interreligious dialogue or interreligious encounter, or with the different, what I teach at the university in Ankara and Islamic religious education, always at the very beginning of my courses, I raise the question, in whatever issue you are going to learn and ask, the first question should be, what does the Quran say about the issue? So the important thing for the believer is to be connected with their own religious text or sources. But this is not only for taking a starting point. This is also for communication with the text. The text does not speak by itself. We need each other. So there is an encounter with the text, all these things. So whenever you encounter with the text, you explore, you disclose new understanding and new meaning. So the verse Ta'aruf, yes, it's only verse, but there are plenty of sources behind this understanding. And you will have the German translation text in the desk outside. I quoted some passages regarding this ta'aruf in the history, what the history Islam says about this concept, so and so, and today what we understand. So the text is a way of communication and is a starting point, but it's more. It should be more than that. And your question, yeah, we are faithful being, and we are in dialogue. This, I can put it like in this statement. For me, the interreligious encounter and interreligious dialogue is to reflect on our as a chance or as a space, a safe space or sometimes brave space to reflect on our own identity and then to try to understand the other. So it is a way of understanding self and other. I can't separate them. It is a dialogical thing. It's a dialogical thing. And when you focus and go deeper in your faith, you come with new understanding, because you go with new encounters or with new insight from the other. And this, for me, was an illuminating journey. And one of my colleagues here, John Walk, and the question he raised it in the workshop, 5 workshop in 7 years, we were very happy to say that, oh, God, in Islam, it is important to believe in God, La ilaha illallah, the concept of Tawheed, and to be a good person. Oh, we think that this is clear, but John asked us, what do you mean by being a good person? And oh, yeah, we need to explain. For us, good person, we have an image from our culture. We know what it is, but we should try to uncover it again, and we should think in terms of the time we are living in. So for me, it is yes, it's a space, as you said, but sometimes a safe, sometimes a brave space to think on our own identity and try to understand the other. So it is a dialogical process. Yes, maybe John would like, but there are questions if you want to say something on this. Yeah. So thank you for your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was very impressed by your work and all this fundamental work of dialogue that you were doing in the last years. And my question is if you see a mentality change in the last few years, because this dialogue, it's a thing that there is since century, and also there are migrants from Turkey since many longer years in Germany. But I think I see in the last 10 years, or also maybe with more refugees coming into Middle Europe, a mentality change and a more openness to this dialogue, or how you see the change in the last years, and how are the perspectives of the chances that you see coming?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a big question. Yes, but thank you. You're asking my own, let's say, idea or observation about the situation. I think it differs from context to context, but nowadays, when we think about an issue, we should take it, as you said it last night, globally, because we are all connected in some sense. So that means we need dialogue more than ever. But for changing the perspective, it's not only when you create a book or a publication and you expect that the perspective will change. Changing the perspective and the improvement needs different supporters. Let's say economical factors, social factors, cultural factors. There are lots of factors coming into play when you are expecting changes. But let me tell you about my own, at this dialogue with my students. When we start our lessons at the beginning, they also think about the other through the things they learned through the media or the books they read or any novel or any story from other and so on. And the important thing first to address the present understanding of the person about the other when we talk about the interfaith dialogue or interreligious dialogue. But as I say, the dialogue, the religious dialogue is only one aspect. But if we are looking for a peaceful living and coexistence and loving each other, loving our neighbor, it's not only a religious thing. There are lots of factors, as I said. And as the time passes with my students, and as we go to the text and learn from our own, think on our own texts, and learn from other tradition, they start thinking and asking questions. For example, the new point we read with my student was the concept of woman in religion. So they read texts from the Torah, they read texts from the Bible, they read texts from the Quran, and we start thinking about the text, and we ask the question, what is the universal aspect in the text, and what is the historical one, and what is the contextual one? And what does the text tell us for today? What do we understand? And as a person, for my personal development, how does it help me? And for society, how can I contribute? So in terms of expanding understanding, yes, I see changes. But when we think about the issue globally and in different countries and culture, there are lots of factors. And I can't say yes or no, but just we analyze the situation from different aspects. And we need, as Professor Heschel said, that not only interfaith, interdisciplinary perspective now, more than ever. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And we can talk more, of course.
So noch, ja.
I don't have a question, in fact, but I will just justify why I am so happy with your talk. So you can just perhaps comment. So I remember that there was a very famous psychoanalyst called James Hillman. According to him, the only possible religion which can represent a possibility for interreligious dialogue are polytheisms, not monotheisms. So it's a very common place to believe that just only polytheism can be the religion or the kind of religion that can represent a possibility, a space for interreligious dialogue. Now, you have just demonstrated the contrary, not in spite of the one God, but thanks to the one God, their diversity is a value, not really in spite of monotheism, but thanks to monotheism. And it is really a revolution. So I've spent years in demonstrating that Christian monotheism is really represent a possible space for interreligious dialogue. But I thought that just the Trinity, the fact that God is triune, can be in a way represent a possibility for a dialogue, because God is not just one, but is one. So there is a kind of diversity in God himself. Now you now demonstrated that the unique God, the one God, even of Islam, appreciates a lot of diversity. You really maintain difference and diversity seem to be based on God's will. Oh God, this is really a revolution for me. And then, so just maintaining reflective loyalty to their own identity and faith tradition, just remaining faithful to your monotheism, you can evaluate or re-evaluate diversity. So I would just tell you, thank you for that. That seems to me a revolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, haben wir eventuell noch eine Frage? Wenn nicht, dann würde ich diese Fragerunde abschließen. Thank you very much, Professor Selçuk, again. Und ja, vielen herzlichen Dank für die Fragen.
Thank you.
So we are now at the end of this long day. Ein Dankwort. Wie Sie wissen, bin ich Italiener oder besser gesagt Sizilianer und ich bin Schweizer auch. Ja, geworden, aber Schweizer. Dann die Begegnung zwischen verschiedenen Kulturen und Religionen gehört zur kulturellen Identität Siziliens und der Schweiz. Oder nicht? Oder nicht? Doch, doch. Na, vor einiger Zeit habe ich meinen DNA-Test gemacht. Das Ergebnis war interessant. Meine DNA enthält Merkmale arabischer, jüdischer, afrikanischer, balkanischer, französischer und englischer Bevölkerungen. Ich bin mir sicher, dass ähnliche Ergebnisse erzielt wurden oder sind sicherlich dabei, wenn jeder von uns seine eigene DNA untersuchen ließe. Wenn ich meiner DNA treu bleibe, finde ich Wege, die mich von mir zum anderen führen. Der andere ist ein Teil von mir. Der andere bin schon ich selbst. Und das passiert für alle DNA. Wissenschaftlich jetzt bewiesen. Liebe Frau Dr. Heschel, liebe Frau Dr. Selçuk, heute habe ich mich wie zu Hause gefühlt. Heute habe ich mich meiner Herkunft treu gefühlt bei Ihnen. Danke, vielen Dank. Danke für Ihre wunderbaren Vorträge. Das ist nicht so rhetorisch gesagt. Danke an die Kollegen Frau Professor Verena Lenzen und Herr Dr. Prakiarian. Ich wollte Ihnen sagen, es ist sehr schön, mit Ihnen zusammenzuarbeiten. Das ist nicht rhetorisch gesagt. Und eben der Dialog fängt wirklich einfach, wie Sie jetzt gerade gesagt haben, durch persönliche Beziehungen, dank persönlichen Beziehungen, nicht durch Kongressen sozusagen. Danke an alle Assistenten und Mitarbeiter der Theologischen Fakultät. Es ist schön, mit euch, mit Ihnen arbeiten zu können. Danke, Frau Graf, für das riesige Engagement. Wir wissen, wie viel Arbeit dahin steckt. Ja, vielen Dank. Danke an Frau Claudia Muff für die schöne und sehr passende Musik. Wirklich sehr passend. Ja. Daraus werden Sie nun 3 Dinge finden. Erstens, Flyer des neuen Zentrums für Theologie und Philosophie der Religionen, das Kollegin Verena Lenzen, der Kollege Herr Dr. Prakiarian und ich neulich gegründet haben. Aber das ist, wie gesagt, nicht nur Papier, sondern das ist schon eine Tatsache. Ja? Und zwar, es geht um schon gemeinsame Forschungen, gemeinsame Mittagessen, gemeinsam Kaffee essen oder trinken. Ja. Ja. Dann, Sie werden finden verschiedene Bücher über den interreligiösen Dialog. Last but not least, Sie werden einen Apero auch finden. Und gerade das Apero findet sich beim Verlassen dieses Saals direkt fast links und dann vor der Mensa. Warum ein Apero am Ende? Weil la vera sapienza è saporita. Die wahre Weisheit ist sehr köstlich. Vielen Dank für das, was wir jetzt erlebt haben. Vielen Dank.